On today's show, the Capitals fall to the Blues by a score of 5-2 and lose back-to-back games. Uh-oh, who let the air out of their tires?
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the future of Ethan Bear. If we remember back, there was a lot of hope. There was a lot of a feeling in the air that he was going to be a part of the next wave of blue liners for the Capitals, but things didn't go quite according to the script. Ultimately, what is the long-term plan for Ethan Bear? I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about less is more for Ovi. It's interesting that Alex Ovechkin has seen some of his greatest production this season, and he's getting less playing time than he has historically. What is behind that success? But just to get it going here, we'll talk about the Capitals as they fall to the Blues. And it kind of gave me the blues, to be honest with you, watching the game. I was thinking to myself, the Blues got it. PLD got back in. They scored. Connor McMichael scored. The Capitals had the opportunities in this game to win. It was sloppy play out there. That was evident. And I think just in a lot of ways undervaluing a Blues team that was really hungry to play spoiler to the Capitals, as the Blues showed up to play and, well, the Capitals did not. That's what we're talking about. And it's funny that I'm going to circle back to that. But that article about Frank Sarvalli, or the podcast where he was talking about the Capitals, that, on paper, it seems like this team is doing really well, and I don't want to go down a negative rabbit hole here. They're still in a good position. But we don't want this thing to get out of control. The Capitals dropping 2 games in a row. It has been quite some time since that has happened, and they lose to the Flames and the Blues and, decent teams, but not some of the best teams in the NHL, I guess I'm going to go ahead and say. So ultimately, what is behind all of that? So let's take a look at what is going on just around in the standings here in particular, to kind of get you a feeling of what is going on with the Capitals. So the Capitals have 84 points. And they lost today, but the Carolina Hurricanes won and now have 72 points. So they do make it a bit interesting here as how things go. Again, if you take a look at the Blues, they are in 5th place in the Central. So kind of, not in it, not necessarily out of it yet. 62 points, where Winnipeg is ahead with 87. So it would be an uphill battle for them. But suffices to say, the Blues showed up to play. The Capitals did not. There was some nice goals out there. The Pierre-Luc Dubois backhand goal was good. To see another goal by Connor McMichael was a good feeling. And I think the easy conclusion to jump to is that it was all Charlie Lindgren, because the Capitals lost by a score of 5-2. And a lot of it was, you take a look at some of the goals. That one goal in particular, there was like 3 or 4 guys in the crease. A bit overkill there. At some point, let Charlie Lindgren do it, or at least have 1 or 2 guys helping him out. It was like most of the roster on the ice was in the crease. And it was just a tough thing, and tough breaks for Charlie Lindgren in general, as there were some deflections as well. I'm not here to absolve him from all guilt, but all things considered, it was a rough outing by our team, the Capitals. But let's do that. Let's dive into the game. Like I said, the game marked their 2nd consecutive regulation loss, finishing with a score of 5-2, and it followed that tough outing to the Flames. And is that a trend? Are they going to be able to turn it around that is the hope this weekend. And like I said, standout performances. Connor McMichael had a standout game showcasing some strong offensive play, but overall the team just couldn't piece it together on the ice. It's more than just a snapshot, and you could see the frustration all over the face of Alex Ovechkin and all over the face of Spencer Carberry. They were plagued by simple mistakes, a lack of execution, and they certainly missed number 43, Tom Wilson, who was out with an illness, not an injury, an illness. Hopefully it is a short illness, relatively speaking. So what did that mean? That meant Jacob Vrana back into the mix there, and I'll talk a bit later what that meant for the Capitals. The Capitals offense struggled throughout the game, trailing behind the Blues for much of the match. Again, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, the Capitals are playing the Flames, they're playing the Blues, what do you think? I would have said win, win. As it turns out, not the case. So the game breakdown here, let's break it down. Early in the game, Philip Broberg of the Blues bagged 2 goals, sending the Capitals into the first period, trailing by a score of 2-1. Now, that was a reoccurring theme lately, failing to create those high-quality scoring chances and looking out of sync. That was the case. I think the Capitals looked disjointed, and they didn't really look like a team that is sitting atop of the NHL or near the top of all of the NHL. They didn't make some line adjustments with Ethan Frank joining Dylan Strome and Alex Ovechkin, but those shifts didn't quite deliver the spark that they needed. So they tried to do it. They tried to mix things up a little bit, trying to jumpstart the engine, but to no avail. Now, it's easy to jump to things like, well, the Capitals lost because, like I said, some people would say Charlie Lindgren, and had it been Tom Wilson in the game, they may have won the game. Maybe, but I don't think that's the case. I think it would have still been disjointed, but make no mistake about it, the Capitals definitely were missing number 43 in the mix. While Jacob Vrana came back into the lineup for the first time, all the way going back to January 6th, and Taylor Radish stepped in for Wilson. They just couldn't fill the void. And it's tough. One of the tough things, and there's no real easy answer there about Jacob Vrana or Alexeyev or McElrath or, Sonny Milano when he's good to go, is they haven't been in the lineup because they're not the best player to be in the lineup on any given night. Subsequently, when they are finally given their opportunity, they're not usually some of the best players out on the ice. And rarely do you see players, oftentimes I reference Irwin, who was a guy that would get put in the cryogenic deep freeze. They'd thaw him out and he was like a robot in there. Just let me go out and play hockey. That it's sometimes difficult. And you did detect some rust to Jacob Vrana's game. Now, Connor McMichael did have a strong performance with an assist and his 21st goal of the season. There was a lot of question about what kind of Connor McMichael we were going to see towards the latter half of the season here, as there was some concern. Those questions were pointed at Spencer Carberry that said some of the things that he did earlier in the season aren't working. And not necessarily Connor McMichael's fault per se, is that just the other teams were prepared for him. They know what Connor McMichael does, that he kind of likes to set up near the net front, even though tonight he got the goal from near Alex Ovechkin's office. But all things considered, a good night for Connor McMichael, and he even helped tie the game twice with goals from Pierre-Luc Dubois and himself. So missed opportunities and defensive errors. So I talked about the highlights, which are, not a whole lot. Let's dig into missed opportunities and defensive errors. The Blues were relentless under the tutelage of Montgomery. As you know, he had a stop here somewhat recently with the Bruins and didn't go so well, but he has the Blues playing pretty good, all things considered. Consecutive goals in the second period from Dylan Holloway and Colton Parayko capitalized on some defensive coverage errors, giving the St. Louis Blues a commanding lead that the Capitals struggled to overcome. And those feelings of we can overcome, it doesn't matter that we're playing from behind. Those feelings are starting to wane for me a little bit. And it's easy how the bottom can get pulled out of any type of success in a hurry. And all of a sudden, the negativity is a stink that kind of wafts into the room. Now, in the third period, it was more of the same. Too many giveaways and disconnected passes, resulting in limited offensive opportunities against Joel Hofer, who stopped 17 of the 19 shots he faced. So not even Binghamton in there. It was their backup. And still, the Capitals could not find pay dirt, at least on a regular basis, other than PLD and McMichael. Now, to top it all off, Jake Neighbors sealed the win for the Blues with an empty netter. So looking ahead here, what can the Capitals do? They have got to work better on execution. What are some of the things that Spencer Carberry said? That the first period against the Flames was the worst period he had seen the Capitals play all season. So you think there would have been, a shot across the bow of the team saying, let's clean it up. Maybe too many high fives in the locker room. We need to have a bit of a come to Jesus now that, Spencer Carberry can give out the love, but he's going to have to give out some tough love. And I think that he will do exactly that as this team, talking, like I said, against the Flames, the worst first period, that this game definitely was not a return to form. So if you were looking for that bounce back, like, okay, we good, not the case. There's more questions than there are answers. There was not the Capitals trying a late game comeback. There was none of that. Again, they came back and tied the game, but all things considered, a slop fest out on the ice. We hope they can turn it around this weekend. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about something not so negative. I mean, the game doesn't give me those feel-good vibes. Let's talk about Ovi and how this season less is more for the Grade 8. I'll break it all down straight ahead. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets in a same game parlay. So if you are a Wizards fan, or say you're caught up in that whole Mavericks Lakers excitement or the All-Star game, or just say you want vested interest in an NBA game in particular, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, it got that much more exciting because right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And of course, I want to thank all of you for making this your first listen of the day. All right, in this next segment here, we're talking about Ovi as he is having a breakout season. There is no Father Time is undefeated in this conversation as Alex Ovechkin is playing some of his best hockey at the age of 39 years old. And it's a bit interesting that he is getting some of his best production in with less playing time out on the ice. So let's dive into that and talk about what is a part of the secret sauce of Alex Ovechkin's success. So you take a look at it. It's impressive to see him making some serious moves toward breaking Wayne Gretzky's legendary NHL record. And after returning from nearly a 6-week hiatus due to a leg injury, Ovi has managed to net 30 goals in just 42 games. And what are some of the things that we know is that he probably would have already caught and passed Gretzky had he not missed all that time. But what is behind his success? Is ice time and efficiency. As Spencer Carberry mentioned, that he is more into quality than quantity, that, you can put up some big minutes out on the ice, but if it's not quality, is that really a good thing? So I think they're taking the right tactic and putting him out there in lesser of a role, not less of a role, but less time out on the ice. It has seemed to pay dividends. So what's particularly interesting is that he's achieving this during the lowest average ice time of his career. Right now, he's clocking in at just 17 minutes and 45 seconds per game, which is quite the drop from the previous low of 18 minutes and 22 seconds during the 2016-2017 season. But again, I think in his younger day, he was more caught up in the limelight. He was more caught up in, partying and having a good time, that he knows that his time in the NHL is limited. And what has he done? He has put in the work training. He trained before the season. He trained during the Four Nations face-off, that we, in a lot of ways, are seeing the best Alex Ovechkin that we have seen in years. And to put that into perspective, last season, he averaged 19 minutes and 13 seconds and scored 31 goals, but that was over 79 games. Now, meanwhile, back in the 16-17 season, he notched 33 goals in 82 games. Now, it's clear that even with a reduced ice time, Ovechkin is more efficient and productive than ever. So I don't think we need to question it too much. And I agree with Spencer Carberry's sentiment there about that it should be quality over quantity. Now, you might wonder how he adapted to this reduced role, and it wasn't an easy sell. That is for sure. So like when we talked about Elliot Friedman saying, well, maybe they should just bench Ovi once he gets near Gretzky and put him out on the ice when he's playing at home so he can do that. Well, that is not the way that Alex Ovechkin is wired. But you take a look at it, the numbers, they don't lie. When we break it down on a per 60-minute basis, he's leading the entire NHL with an astonishing 2.41 goals per 60 minutes. Now, to give you some context of the whole thing, let's talk about another premier player in Leon Draisaitl from Edmonton, who leads the league in total goals with 43, is sitting in second place with 2.06 goals per 60 minutes. So quite a thing that Alex Ovechkin is able to get done in limited playing time. And it's about the power play and his dominance on the power play. One thing to note is Ovechkin's ice time has noticeably decreased during 5-on-5 play. However, he continues, despite all of that, to dominate on the PP, racking up an average of 4 minutes and 23 seconds per game in that situation. And you take a look at it, that stat alone puts him at the top of the league for power play minutes. But when it comes to even strength play, his minutes have dropped to 13 minutes and 21 seconds, which places him sixth among forwards for the Capitals. But, again, he's at the point where he doesn't need to be out there as much as he used to. And we're okay with that. He is still getting the production that we're looking for. So we'll keep an eye on how the season unfolds, especially with Ovechkin chasing history. The proof's in the pudding tonight. When the Capitals as a team do not play well, neither does Alex Ovechkin. So there is definitely, a connection there, if you will, that Ovechkin means the Capitals are playing well and vice versa, that we hope that the team can turn it around and, the Capitals can continue to keep winning and that Ovechkin inches closer and closer to the great one, Wayne Gretzky. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Ethan Bear, currently playing for the Hershey Bears. But is there the possibility that, the Capitals try to trade him? There was so much hope and hype around Ethan Bear, but now he is what they considered buried in the AHL. What's the latest with Ethan? I'll discuss next. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee, but I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade, and let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the US, bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. I took the quick quiz, and in under a minute, they matched me with a roast that was fresh and smelled incredible and tasted, well, even better. My first big was a game changer. It had such a smooth, rich flavor, and I could actually taste the difference from my usual coffee. So right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off for your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. That's drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. All right, in this next segment here, we are talking some Ethan Bear and what is the latest with a guy that, well, there was a lot of high hopes. It wasn't too long ago, last season or thereabouts, that we were talking about where does he all fit in on this team? And, are the Capitals going to even be able to acquire Ethan Bear? When you take a look at it, the initial projection on him was that he was going to be a part of the Capitals' future on the blue line, he figured to be in the mix with like a Rasmus Sandin and these kind of players, but he didn't really live up to expectation. And a bit of a troubling story when it surrounds Ethan Bear. So you take a look at it. At the end of the day, he is happy to be getting in the playing time in the American League, which we know is still pro hockey at the end of the day. But what is the outlook for Ethan Bear? Let's dive into that in the last segment of the show as we gear up for the 2025 NHL trade deadline. The Capitals, well, we're in a great position as strong contenders at the top of the Eastern Conference. Now, unlike the previous years where we've seen the Caps take a more selling approach, it looks like the team won't be making any major moves this time around. And it's one of the things that Chris Patrick said in a press conference today is that he doesn't want to do too much. And, he has his feelers out there that he doesn't want to shake things up because, well, minus these last two games, the Capitals have been playing very well. So if they are going to acquire any players, it's not going to be a whole lot of players, maybe a player here or there. And if anything, they may try to move some pieces out for a player that could help them in their push for the playoffs. Now, one name that's popping up in trade discussions is defenseman Ethan Bear. And this all emanates from ESPN's Emily Kaplan, that the Capitals are indeed having conversations with other teams about Bear, who's eager to get back into the NHL. However, I think that he is going to need to take the next step up in his play. But here's the twist. Reports suggest the Caps are leaning towards keeping Bear as a depth option as they push through the remainder of the season. And, that I don't put a whole lot of stock into that. I think that if they got the right offer, they would do that. However, I don't know if Ethan Bear's value is what they're looking for. Now, he has been lighting it up in the AHL this season, but oftentimes when people make these assessments, it's not necessarily about the AHL. They want to take a look at the back of your hockey card, and if there's been any blips and any dips and any dives, they have some questions. So all things considered, he has been playing pretty well. Would the Capitals ultimately be wise to hold on to him? Now, like I said, he's been lighting it up in the AHL's Bears organization for the Capitals, tallying an impressive 33 points with 8 goals and 25 assists in just 46 games, placing him ninth among all defensemen in the league. Now, the tough part about it is that he is playing pretty well with the Hershey Bears right now. I mean, he is ninth among all defensemen in the league, so definitely a plus. But, kind of the problem that I'm going to say a problem with Dylan McElrath and Alex Alexiev is he's quite a bit, quite a ways down the totem pole, if you will, that if there is an injury, it's most likely going to be Alexiev. And if it's not Alexiev, it's going to be Dylan McElrath. So unless this team faces substantial injury, which I guess is always possible, where does he fit into their master plans? Or do they want to let him stew or marinate a little bit down in the AHL and address it in the offseason? Because, you take a look at the team as is right now. It's pretty good. But, what is there any plans of moving a player out in the offseason? Again, we've heard TVR's name kicked around last summer and around that time. And also, I think there's the distinct possibility that they could trade Ethan Bear or bundle him together in a deal. That oftentimes you can get more bang for your buck if you bundle these players together. Now, remember, he was waived by the Capitals during training camp in October, and this strong showing in the AHL really plays a critical role in his quest for an NHL comeback. Again, but it is, I mean, you take a look at it. The other teams in the league, they're not dumb. They'll look at the back of a hockey card and they'll take a look at those dips and dives. It is a league of what have you done for me lately, but it's all about sustainability. Now, although he was hoping for a quick return to the big leagues, the Caps defense has stayed relatively healthy, which has unfortunately limited his chances for a recall. And like I said, he is going to have to go through Alexiev and McElrath, two players that I think are going to get the bump up first. Now, looking at the performance of the Capitals' current defense, we've seen reliable play from Carlson, Sandin, TVR, and Marty Faravari, all who have participated in all 58 games this season. So there hasn't been a real need to take these players out, much in the same way that you haven't seen Vrana or any other player inserted based on injury, except for today, I guess, due to illness. It's the same thing. So it's all about you have to really kind of widen the lens, I think, when it comes to a guy like Ethan Bear, that where is he going to fit in? You could view him as depth and see how things shake out. If, for example, the Capitals trade or move on from like a TVR, for example, or another guy in the blue line, I guess I don't know, then they would have a player in the wings. But I think that the Capitals will be cautious about how to proceed with Ethan Bear, because they know the ups and downs and kind of see how he plays for the duration of the AHL season. Those kind of things that before he gets a bump up in a hurry, let's really think about it. I think that there's potential there. I think that I agree with that assessment that if they do hold on to him, they hold on to him just as a depth piece, even though it's going to be a tough thing since he is down a couple pegs on the list there. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you guys covered 5 days a week. It's available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.